Hey everybody, Malcolm here from Living Giant Productions. Today I want to talk to you about photographing the full moon. As a hobbyist photographer, the first time I got a big telephoto lens like this one, the first thing I want to do is actually photograph the moon. And I did that on my A6000. I connected it and handheld it straight in my backyard, and I got this shot right here. The nice thing about the moon is it's so bright that you have to cut a lot of the light down in your settings to get it to expose properly. This makes it very easy to photograph right in your own backyard or even in a deep city center with bright lights. So you have several options when you're photographing the moon. The first is you can handhold it. And if you have a camera, it's going to be set with a high enough shutter speed that it is possible to handhold and shoot directly at the moon. The next thing you can do is use a monopod. And you can attach the monopod to the base of the camera, or if you have a big telephoto like this, you can attach it to the foot. It helps if you have a pivoting head, but even just having it extended out somewhere to rest will allow you to hold your hand much steadier on it. The most ideal way for the absolute smoothest result is to use a heavy-duty tripod. Because a big heavy telephoto lens like this weighs quite a bit, a lot of the lighter, smaller tripods that you may have won't hold the weight of the lens, especially when you get it tilted up if you're shooting straight up. Now, if you're hand holding the camera and the lens, you're going to just go ahead and take a picture like you normally would with your shutter button. Be as still as you can, hold it up, and slowly press that button. And the same will go for when you're using the monopod. A tripod changes the dynamic a little bit because you can get even steadier results. If you're going to use a tripod, you're going to be set up on the camera a little bit differently. First thing you want to do in your camera settings is turn off your optical image stabilization. The next thing you're going to be able to do with a tripod is actually put your shutter on a timer, so you don't even have to touch the camera for it to release the shutter. And you just do that by going into your drive mode, and you go down and select a 2-second or a 5-second shutter, whichever you prefer. 2-second is usually enough, and that's the one I use. Once you have that 2-second shutter set, you can go ahead and either use your shutter button to lock in your autofocus on the moon, or you can manually focus it with your the manual focus ring on your lens. Once you have everything locked down, go ahead and press that shutter, get it to set the timer, it'll flash and beep at you, and then the shutter will release. And that way the camera is rock solid on your tripod, not moving. Unfortunately, there is some movement involved with moon photography, and that's the moon itself, as it's the only thing that is going to be moving, and it moves rather quickly, especially at like a 600mm equivalent on your lens. It's going to track across your frame, so you will have to be constantly adjusting your camera to get it back in the right angle. Now, one of the things I learned recently is that if you're going to be videoing the moon with a high telephoto zoom lens, you're going to want to manually set your focus on those occasions with video. The reason being is that as the camera's aiming at it, it's always trying to adjust for it, and it'll hunt, and you'll lose focus, and it'll come back in, it'll lose focus and come back in. And if you want just a nice crisp image of the moon traveling across your screen, you're going to need to set it in a manual focus and have your manual focus ring set exactly where you want it. Now, for your best results to photograph the moon, I would plan it out. And the way I do that is I use the apps on my phone, or go on like the moon calendar or moon phase on the website, and I try to plan out when the best ideal full moon will be present. And that's usually when it's closest to the Earth. Those are usually the supermoons. They're usually, anywhere from 8 to 6,000 miles closer than it normally orbits at. Now, it may seem like a small little bit, but it works out at 8,000 miles. It's about 3% closer to us, and you can get just a little bit more detail possibly out of your camera with it. The other thing that always will affect it is the weather. Sometimes the clouds don't cooperate, the sky is hazy, you've got dust in the sky. Those things all affect, obviously, whether or not you're going to be able to capture an image that night of the full moon. Luckily, you have about a solid 3 nights of full moon, the night before, the night of, and the night after, where it's really hard to tell the difference between a full moon or one that's just coming off of it, or coming before it's coming onto a full moon. Now, some of the key tips that I recommend when you're shooting the moon. The moonrise may look really cool and watching the moon come up over a mountain, or even like where I'm at, where it's dead flat out here in West Odessa, where you can't see anything but just a flat horizon line. Unfortunately, you're looking through a lot of atmosphere when you do that, and the moon can look distorted and hazy. You just don't get a crisp, clean image of it. The optimal time to shoot it is when it's directly overhead. That means you have the least amount of atmosphere to actually get through to see that light, or you have the light travel through the atmosphere, is when it's straight up over you. And that's where, again, you're going to need a heavy tripod to hold this camera like this. So for the cleanest results, you're going to want to have the moon directly overhead almost. Now, if you want to shoot like something like a blood moon or an eclipse, sometimes it happens when it happens, so you have to work with what you have there. The best thing for those kind of events where they're very rare is to pre-plan it a month or two in advance and have alternate locations planned out for where you might be able to shoot that at, and go out and scope those locations first. When I did the blood moon shoot last year, it was during February, and the thing that I made the mistake on is we only had one location in mind for it, and it wasn't a very good location, as it ended up having lots of truck traffic. We had sand blowing around. It was just a busier area than it had been for the gentleman that I went with in the past had last experienced. So I would definitely pre-plan to go out and scope different locations and make sure they're far enough apart in different directions. That way, in case you do get weather coming in, you have an alternate plan in place of where you could go where there is no weather. Practice shooting the moon. I definitely go out, and you can do it right in your backyard. Practice your settings, practice what's going to work for you. My ideal starting point is going to be around f8 at the 400 millimeter. I use manual focus. I use the focus magnification tool, and I zoom in with that tool as far as it'll go, and I really dial in my focus right where I want it. Atmospheric haze or anything may see a distortion. You won't get those crisp, clean, dark images that you might be seeing online. You really have to have a really clean atmosphere for those images, and you're not always going to get that. I live out here in West Texas where it's dusty all the time unless it's rained. So it's been dry here for over a week. It's going to be dusty. There's dust on the air. There's haze on the horizon. So as I say again, the best thing to do is shoot straight up, or is when the moon's directly overhead throughout the night. All right, the sun just set. The moon just rose. Let's get it set up and see what we can get tonight. Okay, so the moon's low on the horizon. It just rose. It's been up now for about 45 minutes. And right now it's low on the horizon. It's about right there. What we're getting is a lot of haze. There's a big halo around the moon right now. Tonight we want to be shooting vertically. Get over this haze, get over the dust. Everything will be nice and cleaner that way. And we're expecting clear skies at around 10 to 12 o'clock tonight. See you in a little bit. All right, about 11 p.m. at night. I've got a few clouds overlaying, but right now the moon's clear, and it should stay that way, even with a little bit of cloud. It looks like coming in. So we're gonna be kind of quick by getting these shots off, so we can see what we can capture tonight. Now, first thing we're gonna do is set up. I'm just in my backyard. I got my tripod here. You got comfortable somewhere to sit, just to kind of relax, enjoy the evening. We're gonna go ahead and turn the camera on. And first thing we want to do is make sure we're on manual for photo. We're going to go ahead and center up. Our frame for our initial shot. And I know you won't be able to quite see this here, but we're centered up. The next step, make sure we're at 400 millimeters on this case. If you have a 200, you're going to use the 200. You're going to want to put your telephoto lens all the way zoomed in. Now, to help find the moon, sometimes zoom it out, work your way into it, try to find it centered, and then zoom into it. ISO, we're going to start with ISO 100. Right now we're sitting on f16, but I was set up for filming at 150th. We're going to go ahead and move our aperture to f8. We'll start at f8 and our shutter at 1/400th. Now it looks like, to me, in the image here, it gives us a lot of good detail. Now, the other thing you want to make sure is we shut off our image stabilization on the lens if you have the switch. If not, go on the camera and make sure it's off. My understanding is the image stabilization switch on the lens shuts off everything when you turn it off. Now the moon's already moved out of my frame that quick, so we're gonna get it recentered real quick. If your tripod head it feels loose, try tight. There's usually adjustment screws, you can tighten them up too. Now, setting the focus, you can see there's an area like where it goes into infinity. It's not in focus. Now when you're setting the focus on the camera, it'll actually travel up to infinity and it's out of focus. You actually got to pull it back off of infinity, and I find it that if you pull it off of infinity to the very first numbers that show up, and you gotta be really still with this. There's a lot of movement at 400 millimeters to find that perfect focus point. And you can zoom in more if you need to by clicking on the center button of your control wheel on the Sonys. Focus magnification. So there we got some crest detail there on the top of the moon. We'll try to focus in on that. Now when you're setting focus, I like to do both. I like to take both images, some in auto and some in manual. That way I'm covered in case manual was off or auto was off. At least I know I've got some choices. Plus you're going to take several pictures. Got the moon centered up in our frame. We're going to go over and turn on our self timer. I've got mine set to 2 seconds. It works well for me. 2 seconds gives you enough time for the camera to stop moving. And we're just going to hit the shutter button. So there's the whole image complete. No crop in with the edit. Let's go back and play back our image and just see how sharp it is. We're gonna press play, and then we're gonna magnify into it. And this will really give you an idea of where your focus landed, is how much detail you can get. We have a lot of crater detail on the edge. Not the sharpest. I think I am still getting a lot of atmospheric haze tonight. Let's see what autofocus can do for us right now. Switch it over to turn your autofocus switch on the lens if you have it. Once it locks on, we'll see what the camera figures out. Let's see which one looks better. I would say the autofocus did a better job capturing this image. Now, when you're out here practicing, or if you're actually out doing a shoot of something actually, significant, like say the supermoon like it is tonight, get lots of images, get different settings, so you can go back later and post, see what actually looks good. Alright guys, I've had a lot of fun this evening making this video for you, and I hope you got some good information out of it. Please, if you did, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to get more video content like this, or let me know what you think of this video and the format. If you have any other questions, please hit me up in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. You probably hear that weed eater. We'll wait. I think you'll be done for a while.